Good afternoon and welcome to the Design Leaders Podcast. Every day I speak with candidates looking to grow in the world of design, development and construction. I also speak with market leaders at the peak of their career who regularly talk about mentorship and helping the next crop of leaders in their development. This podcast is for those people hoping to learn what the next step in their career could look like. Today, I'm here with Jinger Tapia, Vice President of Design for Ware Malcomb. Having spent a couple of years with Ware Malcomb in the late 90s, she returned a couple of years later as a boomerang to grow and now to lead the overall design direction for Ware Malcomb. She's part of the executive team and a key mentor to many throughout the group. Jinger, I really appreciate you joining me today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. I always start these podcasts the same. I want to jump into your background and learn a little bit about you first off. So if you wouldn't mind, Jinger, tell me a little bit about your background and how you got your start in design.
Well, my father owned a construction company and growing up, and when we would drive around the city and he'd point to projects that he worked on, I always found it fascinating and thought it was cool for him to be able to share his professional day-to-day job with what I was doing. I also really loved math. There's something super cool about having a right answer, black and white, and art. And so the crossing point of those two, creativeness of art and the rationality of math, drew me to architecture and sort of being able to play on those two things together. And so I explored in high school, what does it take to become an architect and architecture major, and then applied to a couple of colleges and decided to go to the University of Arizona in Tucson. And so that was, really my first dive into architecture and the design world, and just loved it. Love it. Never look back.
Awesome. Obviously, I've had a few of these discussions and I've always started the question the same, how do you get your start in design? Where does the passion come from? And it's always very interesting that it tends to come from some sort of early childhood memory and usually some relevance to a family member being involved in the built environment. Looking a little bit further on from that, in the early years of your career, what are some key milestones or key experiences that have helped shape your career path?
I think starting at Ware Malcomb, I had a direct mentor, John Thomas, who I still work with today, that's still here, that really challenged me to think about design and the delivery process as it relates to client goals, right? And we're problem solvers for our clients, and I think that's always made an impression on me. I also came out at a time where there was this juxtaposition between old school hand drawing and new school AutoCAD and this technological overlap. So be able to do those and see that emergence of technology, which we'll talk about where that stands today, I'm sure later in the conversation, was interesting, and being able to see where the roots of architecture lie and where we're going in the future has shaped me. And then so really getting the trust from the leadership and mentorship early on, it's defined my career throughout the years in various ways.
I think it's really interesting that, I'm not an architect, I'm not a designer, I just spend a lot of time from the outside of the industry looking in, but the way people talk about the idea of moving from hand-drawn processes to AutoCAD and Revit, it seems like we're at another pivotal threshold with the introduction of machine learning, AI, which we absolutely will touch on in a moment. One thing that I didn't get a chance to touch on in my last series was understanding challenges and lessons learned. And I think it's pretty crucial to talk about that because naturally there will be people that are going through their own challenges, their own adversaries at the moment and looking for ways to overcome. So on your end, Jinger, what are some of the more significant challenges that you faced in your career and how did you look to overcome them?
That's an interesting question. And one I've pondered a few times, but I think you mentioned early in the intro was a boomerang. And so when I came out and joined Ware Malcomb, it was a very welcoming and fostering environment. And for me, it was not embracing my skill, we'll call it, and having a bit of imposter syndrome, and thought the opportunity that Ware Malcomb trusted in me when I was younger couldn't be it, right? There should be more structure to this, or you can't rush time and that sort of thing. So I ventured off and gained some valuable experience at another firm. But then I was at a point in my life, in my career, where I was just about to get married and start a family. And I saw, perception is everything. I saw a colleague who was a little bit ahead of me, really struggling with balance, work-life balance, of expectations of work and motherhood, and life in that particular moment. And I realized it was, I didn't want to have to deal with that challenge. And an opportunity knocked to come back to Ware Malcomb with the then CEO, now our chairman, and really talked about growth and leadership and opportunities for flexibility. And I saw that as a way to maybe achieve what I wanted at that time in my life. So that proved positive and worked out. And then fast forward a few years, marriage was done, starting the family, and the balance of being a great mother, a great wife, a great daughter, a great designer at the time. That's where the stresses come in, and the challenge. And with my first, I have two children. The first child was it was a big personal challenge for me, which you bring your personal challenges to work. You try not to, but that does, right, affect the day to day. And was stressful, and really feeling the balance. And it wasn't pressure from work. It wasn't really pressure from family. It was more in my own head, and this expectation of what it means to be successful, or what I thought it meant to be successful, and being able to hit those milestones, or that idealism, is really self-defeating in the moment. But coming out of that, going through that struggle, and just really having a lot of time for introspection, and what did it mean to be happy, and what is my ideal of success, and setting those parameters and achieving that, and not what the world dictates, right, of what it means to be successful, really helped me when it was time for my second child, when it came along, and balancing that, and understanding, keeping myself and my priorities in check, and frankly, being able to say no, right? That's been a challenge throughout the years, and it's okay. It's okay to say no sometimes.
I think that point is not the first time I've heard that point about, being able to say no, having those parameters, as it were. And I think that's not necessarily industry specific. That's across all industries. It's something we talk about in recruitment, the idea of whether it's to do with the time that you've got, the capacity, or whether it's just your area of expertise, being able to be honest and say no. So I think that advice goes across industries. Moving now into kind of more of a focus in your current life and your current work life, as a leader, what principles, what strategies have been instrumental for you in driving growth, in driving success, morale? What are those principles and strategies, Jinger?
It rooted in that, what we just talked about, is really understanding the why, and the vision, and why do I come to work every day, and what am I trying to achieve? And as a leader of design, I have this notion of, which goes into growth and evolution, of you have to be self-aware of when your capabilities are where you are, but also where you'd like to go. And there's a lot of strategy and planning and thought that goes into that. And then communicating that ultimate vision of, right, we'd like to improve design. I'd like to change our brand awareness, however that may be, or just continue to evolve and be better. And being able to set those goals and strategies as a leader and then communicate them to the rest of the team. And that develops a sense of connection and worth of, I'm just not showing up from 8 to 5 and doing whatever I'm paid to do and go home, right? There's a bigger reason of what we're trying to achieve here. And it varies. It could vary from team to team within Ware Malcomb. You know, we have an overall mission about improving the quality of, right, of the built environment for our clients. But then as you drill down to each of our individual organizations, you know, whether it's design or architectural project teams or accounting or marketing, right, they might be a little bit more granular to how to get to that bigger goal. But really understanding how do you communicate that to your teams and getting on board and being transparent about where you are today, where you want to go tomorrow. I think for me has proved successful.
I do just want to touch on that, you know, in the nature of transparency and communication and understanding the why behind someone's doing something. How do you, both as a group, but also you with your team, how do you foster that culture of communication, collaboration, innovation, especially in a, you know, post-COVID world where hybrid remote work and flexibility have become far more important? How do you look to achieve those goals in this, you know, online digital era?
Yeah. Flexible I'm going to keep going back to origin story, right? Flexibility is important. It was important to me 20 years ago. It's important to me today. It's important to my team today. And I think there's more acceptance. And in order to have flexibility, you have to build trust, both on both sides, right? As a team leader and as a team member. And so that goes both ways. And part of that is virtual conversations, but it's also creating a human connection with your team. And so now that everyone, you could work anywhere, there needs to be a thought about coming and working into the office. And how do you create that FOMO or the environment that enhances the work that we do, right? The office needs to be similar to a stage or an auditorium where a singer goes and it amplifies the voice and it just sounds amazing, right, for the performance. Um, that's the role of the office as we start to move forward. And so I think creating specific touch points that we talk about the work that we're doing together face to face, and can sketch and draw side by side, right? Whether it's within the individual design team or the project team, that goes a long way of building that trust and connection. Um, but I don't discount this sort of interaction, right? It's I prefer this actually over phone because you get to see the facial cues
Mhm.
of who you're talking to and some of those nonverbal cues that you don't get over a phone call. That's only tone and inflection. Um, so there's value to it, and I think being smart about how we create those connection points and interactions will help foster career advancement. We're humans by nature need to have personal touch and interaction. So this is easy. This is the easy part.
Of course, that makes sense. I think I miss the days where, you know, I'd meet clients face to face. It happens still, but, you know, far more rarely than it used to. And I think anytime I'm speaking to someone on the phone, I agree. I wish it was a video call, a Zoom call. I guess I could see the face, see the kind of the response, the body language, all of that. Moving forward, now looking forward, you know, to the extent that we can discuss here, there might be some areas that we may not be able to jump into, but what are the primary goals and the primary aspirations for you and your design team over the coming years?
We touched a little bit about this. Is this where are we as an industry and with technology, right? And
Mm.
the advent of AI and the advancement. And I think as an industry, we are slow to adapt. Construction and architecture and engineering industry, and super conservative. And if you look at our, you know, automotive, any other industry outside of commercial real estate, there's this huge improvement in technology that's impacted the way people are working or delivering products. And I think you're seeing some really cool AI and technology that's being introduced. It'll take some time, I think, to adapt because there's a lot of constituents in delivering a building. It's not just architects, right? It's construction and consultants and you know, all along this pathway. But really understanding how that technology flows into our process, and from an automation standpoint, and reducing some of the repetitive nature of the work that we do, that would allow architects, designers, engineers, people in our industry to focus on our strength, right, and the creative delivery of our project, and maybe not so much the sort of repetitive nature of some of the things that we're doing. Sheet setups, for instance, in architecture, or, you know, standard details or door schedules, right? There's the old school drafting things can be automated and not be an existential problem for architecture, right? Technology is not here to totally replace us, and I think we need to be able to understand that and leverage it so that we can become better and enhanced. And so with that, we have, you know, started looking at what are some tools that could help us, which I'm not going to talk about, but what are some tools that we can build into our process, and help us facilitate design decisions, or you know, the overall delivery model of what we're doing, and to allow us to focus on what's really important, which is the why in creation.
Seems like it will often come back to the why, you know, why we're doing what we're doing. I think also, you know, we talked there kind of, you know, very, very top level there about kind of repetitive projects, and we're kind of getting into a project idea there. Can you share any upcoming project information, understanding you might not be able to, or in fact any initiatives, knowing that you are a big piece in that mentorship initiative as part of Ware Malcomb? Can you share any project info, initiative info that you yourself are particularly excited about?
I will share one tidbit. So with the mentorship, we've over the years, as part of investing in our team, and you know, sort of developing the entrepreneur and leadership quality, we've created a mentorship program. So once you've been here a certain time, you can apply to be in this mentorship program that runs a year, and you're paired. You have a choice of leaders and team members who've been here for a while, and we highlight some of our skills and professional achievements that we have, and then we pair the mentees with the mentors. And that has taken a lot of time and is a heavy manual process, right? To go through what's the candidate looking for, mentee, who are the mentors that align, right? How do you match those together? And so we're looking at a tool that we've developed that can help automate that a lot faster. So that our team members who have a day job, right, and focus can get through this important aspect of assigning mentees and mentors, so that we can create this culture of learning and innovation, and then let them get back to their day job, focusing on the why.
Mhm.
So,
So I imagine, again, that focus of the why will likely probably be a common theme in this question as well. But in the topic of mentorship, you know, junior professionals, what advice do you have for young architects looking to advance their careers in this day?
mentorship is huge, and I think there's a few different type of people you should look for. Um, One is to find a friend or colleague in the company that you work with, um, that's not a direct competitor to where you want to go, but understands you, and understands the culture of the company, and you two can riff together, right? And kind of run scenarios by, and and help run through maybe some challenges that you may have. I think that that's important. And then find someone also within your organization who could be your advocate that understands the detail of the work that you're doing, what your future goals are. It may not necessarily be your direct manager, it may, but is that helps advocating for the work that you're doing on your behalf. You should also learn to advocate for yourself. It took me a long time to learn that one. And not in an annoying way, but right, you have to be comfortable talking about the achievements that you've done with senior leadership in a very high level kind of touch base standpoint. And then lastly is, if possible, find a mentor outside of your company, perhaps even outside of your industry, that's in a more senior position that can provide you some advice that isn't tangled up in the social aspects of the company, and doesn't quite know you, but is sort of giving you that professional outsider input of, have you thought about it this way?
Interesting. I think that's a fairly structured roadmap for what those who are listening should probably take on board. I think particularly the idea of mentorship, friend, colleague, the idea of learning through osmosis and just kind of being next to someone who might be better than you at a certain attribute or a certain skill, learning from them and kind of soaking up as much as possible. And as a recruiter who spends so long speaking with top talent who don't know how to advocate for themselves, don't know when advocating for oneself becomes showing off, and don't know the line potentially to draw. So absolutely, I think there are more people out there with talent and with skill sets and great experience who need to learn to advocate for themselves. Absolutely. And for those listening, I think there's some great touch points there for you to take on after this and take on that advice. Are there any?
And I would say, not to cut you off, but to go back a little bit about the learning piece. You're going to stub your toe, and that's okay. And that's how you learn. I heard this great quote. I was telling a friend of mine the other day, I think on the radio, that growth takes two things, and it's pain and reflection. And which is so true. It seems so simple, but to really think about that, my greatest learning experience throughout my career, from a technical standpoint, professional standpoint, even personal, has been some faux pas that I did or didn't understand that was corrected, and now right? And no matter how much you read or people tell you, until you experience it and learn the adversity and how to deal with that and come out on the other side, that's the growth and evolution. And perfection is not an option, nor should be something you strive for.
Not my favorite, but one of my favorite things about this podcast is speaking with people who, have metaphors, have sayings that I've never heard before. And I can tell you, the idea of stubbing your toe and, facing those issues and kind of coming past them. I like that metaphor. It's not something I've heard before. In your advice, Jinger, are there any books, any resources that you would recommend professionals in the field to read, take note of, obviously, besides the mentorship and the person touch to resources?
I've recommended a book called The Making of a Manager. It was written, I believe it was a young woman up in Silicon Valley who was put in a managerial position for the first time, and is a good intro book for new leaders or somebody managing people, to understand sort of how your role changes and the dynamic between doing and leading, or managing, I should say. So that one I always enjoy. I tend to, a lot of my colleagues, which I do, I go through Architectural Digest and Architectural Record and all the hot websites, but I also spend some time on NASA and popular science, sort of looking at trends and things, creative fashion designers, and how artists create music, and just the whole idea of creativity and where it comes from and how people are inspired. Um, so it's good to be in your niche of expertise, but it's also good to look outside, um, and see what the rest of the world is doing.
What a wonderful segue into my section that's kind of more than design, and talking about your personal life and kind of your hobbies and your enjoy and what you enjoy. I imagine, you know, art, music, science will play a big part in this. But outside of your work life, Ginger, what hobbies, interests do you have that contribute to your overall well-being, your overall work-life balance, and your creativity? Understanding that we have just started to touch on it there.
I like to doodle slash draw, right? Goes back to where we opened the conversation. And years ago, I bought this book. It's like 647 Things to Draw at Barnes and Noble. It's about, this thick. And you open it up, it's blank pages, and it has a prompt up at the top, TV or melting snowman or something, right? And you just sketch it. It's been in my family. I mentioned I have two kids, they're now teenagers, for years. And I had a rule that anyone who drew in it has to write your name and the date. And so it got tucked away for about a year and a half, and I found it recently and pulled it back out. So it's now sitting and people are drawing. I'm drawing in it. My sons are drawing in it again. But it's cool to go back and look at the evolution of drawing as a skill set that you can hone and get better at, and to see is, hand-eye coordination and that whole piece. So that that's a mindless sort of creative hobby that I do. Um, and other than that is just being outside. We're indoors so much on the weekends or at night, a walk anywhere, is I'll take it.
Mhm.
Baseball park. I spend a lot of time at the baseball field, so
Do you play, Ginger?
I don't play. My boys play. They've
Got you.
played for a long time, so.
Interesting. That book, it sounds like it could be something, you know, one day when your children have drawn in it and they pass it on, what a wonderful family heirloom, treasure, whatever it might be,
Yeah.
you know, what a wonderful that kind of family memento to be able to have together. Um, Could you share a memorable, a lasting memory that has either come from your personal life that's had an impact in your career, or vice versa, something from your career and your professional life that's had a lasting impact on your personal life, Ginger?
Oh, there's so many. Um, I often get asked, what's my favorite project? Um, it's like your kids, whichever one you're working on that day is my favorite project, right? You can't pick. But there's one project in particular that I'm proud of, and I think shaped me from a career standpoint, and that is Hollywood 959 that I designed, office building. And it was, I'll say, a stretch growth for me as a project designer, um, and challenged me in multiple ways from in a profession, from creativity, showing leadership, expertise, client confidence, internal confidence. Um, how do I show up, right, from a client standpoint, and how do I feel about that from dealing with imposter syndrome, and where you fit. And that one for me has always been, I lovingly look back as the project for me that sort of set the mark. And I'm still proud of it. One of my favorites.
And I think one thing that I haven't been asking this series, but I think for you with such a focus in design, it would be well worth asking the question. If you could design anything, money not being an issue, what would you design, Ginger?
Wow, that's a new one. That's that one. If I could design anything, um, Probably my house. I have not done that yet. I suspect that will be a long ongoing endeavor.
Mhm. That's
Um,
almost like a living portfolio of yours
yeah,
that you can live in, essentially. What a
yes,
wonderful idea.
yeah,
But I think,
yeah. Have
you know,
to argue with the client. Well, the client expects, right, this, but the client doesn't have the budget. This internal
you,
debate on my shoulders.
yeah, exactly. And I think, well, as we come to the end, Ginger, what I want to make sure is when we share this finished episode, we're going to make sure to include your LinkedIn. We want to make sure we can direct people to the appropriate places. So if anyone wants to learn a little bit more about you or about Ware Malcomb, where can they go? Where can we send them, Ginger?
I am on LinkedIn, so Ginger Tapia, Ginger with the J. You can also find me at waremalcomb.com under the search in the people section, and I'll pop up and we have all of our contacts in there.
Awesome. Well, I think we have come to the end, Ginger. So I really appreciate you taking the time this afternoon to speak with me. I hope those that are still listening, 36 minutes in, took from what you said, and I hope they found it valuable as well. So I really appreciate it and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, you too.